Today's AskReddit post. To those who have accidentally killed someone, what went wrong? Oh boy, this is gonna be a good one. Let's get started. Rock climbing in Nevada. I was securing the line. Paused to sneeze. My friend prematurely switched lines without me giving him the thumbs up. He fell over 100 feet. I haven't climbed since. I was 18. I'm 51 now. Fuck bro. Sorry that you aren't through that. Hope you're okay and you found peace. It wasn't your fault at all. My dad is a garbage truck driver in a major city. A few years ago, there was a dead and crushed homeless man found at the dump. They went through the camera footage and the tickets for the trucks coming and going and narrowed it down to my dad's truck who dumped the man. The guy was sleeping in a dumpster. For those of you that don't know, there's a packer blade in the back of those trucks to squish the garbage to make more room. He didn't stand a chance. Damn, they really did him dirty telling him that. They could have just checked the security cam, made sure it wasn't foul play, and kept quiet. I asked my college roommate to drive my car since I was tired. Not sure what happened as I was asleep, but he ended up hitting an oncoming vehicle head on at around 60-70 miles per hour. I was the only survivor. His parents were extremely helpful in forcing me to accept that it wasn't my fault, but my heart breaks regularly for his lost potential. He was an incredible guy and would have done great things. I'm sure of it. They likely fell asleep too. I stupidly once drove to work tired and had a macro sleep. It is terrifying. I was lucky to have drifted slightly off the road and not into oncoming traffic. No, but I thought I did for almost 2 years. Very close friend of mine. The kind of guy that always seemed to be happy and everybody just loved him. Was hanging out at his place. We were 16 back then, and for whatever reason I don't remember. I showed him how to tie the hangman's knot. 3 days later he was dead. His mom called, claiming he hung himself, and it was all my fault. Fucked me up badly. My friend was dead. I never saw anything coming, and apparently it was even my fault. Almost 2 years later we found out by coincidence that he killed himself with exhaust fumes in his mom S car. I lines never know why he did it, which still haunts me sometimes, or why his mom blamed me with wrong accusations. Never could be angry about that though, given how painful that must have been for her, or how she knew about that stupid knot. A crazy wasted guy broke into my house several years ago. He had a knife and was threatening me. My young son and I were the only ones home. I heard noise in my house and grabbed a baseball bat I keep under my bed and went to investigate thinking it was probably nothing. The guy came at me yelling incoherently and almost as a reflex I cracked on top his head with the bat. I think my adrenaline must have put more into the strike than I thought I was doing, and the guy dropped immediately. I called 911 and police arrived quickly, but he was already gone. Crushed skull. I still have nightmares fairly often, but can't picture how else it would have ended without me, and possibly my son being attacked. Survival instincts are strong. I'm sorry that happened to you. You were defending yourself and your family from someone armed and unpredictable. I hope you find peace someday. This never happened to me personally, but my dad drove for Toronto subways and streetcars for 30 years. The amount of suicides he's seen is astonishing. Just last month a mother and her newborn jumped. Both passed away. My dad has always had therapy once a week my entire life. I understand why. I take the TTC to and from work. The number of personal injury at track level announcements really seems to increase in the winter. It's so sad. And I really feel for your dad and the other drivers. What a terrible thing to witness and feel so powerless over. Hadn't heard anything about that mother/newborn you mentioned. Not that they ever say anything about any of the jumpers. But that is particularly horrific. Ugh. I was driving to play a code soccer game at night. First snowfall of the year. Didn't even make it off my own street before suddenly seeing something under my headlights. Didn't have time to stop before hitting him. I don't know why he was lying on the road, but I do wish I had noticed him sooner so that I could have asked, "That's ducked man, I'm sorry." This was a hockey accident when I was 19. I'm 36 now. I shot a low slap shot and there was a net battle and my friend on the other team got shoved. Fell over and the puck hit him in his temple and shattered much of the structure. He died later because of the bone fragments in his brain. I stopped playing for a long time after that. Now I play men's league and wear his number. Edit. Didn't expect to receive tons of comments and DMs. They're a lot to reply to and really heavy to remember. Emotions came up that I haven't felt in almost 20 years. I'm really thankful for the outreach. I ask that we show this kind of love to people in person. Good on you for keeping his memory alive. And may he rest in peace. How are you? This happened to my uncle back in the 1970s. He was coming home from work one night in a snowstorm and turned onto his road. His house was on the other side of a hill. He climbed the hill, and as he started descending the other side, he heard kids screaming and yelling. Brakes were useless. He ran over a 10-year-old kid who was sledding down the hill in the middle of the road and killed him. It was his next door neighbor. There was no charge against him. Nobody sued him, because it was clear that it was a freak accident. Even the kid's parents told him it was not his fault. However, my uncle, 53 years old, a WWII-USMC combat veteran of the Pacific War, previously strong-willed, clear-headed, and not a drinker, drank himself to death in less than a year. Tragic all the way around. Stories like these are why I was never allowed to play in the road when I was a kid. My neighbors were, and I thought my parents were just being overly strict. But as an adult and parent now, I get it. We lived in a dead-end street on a hill. Cars used to come flying down there thinking they could avoid the traffic. And when they realized it was a dead end they would speed up to turn around and get back to the top of the street. I don't know if it's the same. I did CPR on a guy who died. He was the first person I ever did CPR on. Since then, I've done CPR on an infant that died, a little girl that drowned, and she died, then on a grown woman who lived. Well, if it makes you feel any better, your CPR success rate is above average. I've read that CPR rarely works, unlike in movies and TV. I was maybe 16 and had planted a huge vegetable garden in our backyard. My grandma came over and I was super excited to show her since she absolutely loved plants and gardening. She comes over and started pulling weeds in my garden. One was especially hard to pull out and she fell backwards and hit her head on a paver stone. Had a brain bleed and was in a care home not knowing who anyone was and unable to walk or move her hands for the rest of her life. I technically didn't kill her, but I think the outcome was worse than death. A former classmate of mine was driving late at night, intoxicated, and hit someone with her car. She thought she had just hit a deer and kept going. When she found out about the guy's death she put 2 and 2 together and turned herself in, plead guilty, and I think did a year or 18 months in jail. Seems to be doing okay now, but damn. At the very least, she had the stones to turn herself in. But still, damn. My wife has a friend who was driving and hit someone on a Lime scooter. The person was drunk and in the wrong lane, so my wife's friend wasn't at fault and didn't get charged with anything. But the experience was incredibly traumatizing, and last I heard she was going through therapy. I almost killed myself on a Lime scooter. If there weren't good Samaritans around to get me back up and awake after I knocked myself out, I'd probably would be much worse off today. I ended up with broken orbital and a broken sinus bone. Thank God I'm here to type this. Lime scooters are dangerous. I didn't accidentally kill them, but I was riding home with a friend of mine on our bikes down the turnpike when a senior citizen who didn't check their blind spot changed lanes and sent my friend into and over the guardrail into a tree, severing his spine on impact, paralyzing him from the shoulders down, ribs puncturing his lungs as well. I just had to sit there and listen to him gasp and struggle to take his last few breaths on our linked intercom headsets. Fuck man. Absurd the elderly can still drive past a point. I had a good friend die at my house years back. He had taken Subutex or Suboxone unbeknownst to me. I was tired and needed to go to bed. He wanted me to hang out, so I smoked some cigarettes with him and we drove to the quick stop for a beer. Hung out a little longer and he looked like he was trashed. So I put him and his sleeping girlfriend's, my roommate, bed and put on season 3 of House MD and said goodnight. He ended up overdosing and died in his sleep. Sent a good number of the friend group down dark paths after that, myself included. It's getting better for me now at least, and several others are sober finally. Always felt like he was wanting to hang out longer, so I could keep him alive. I'm in the medical field. I know it doesn't technically count as killing someone, but failing to save someone due to lack of experience, inadequate reaction time, or even your choice of medication can sure feel like you killed someone. I clearly remember the first patient under my care who died unexpectedly. I ordered the standard care medication for him and even joked around with him on the way out of the door. 2 hours later I was in his room as part of the cardiac arrest team. He didn't make it. There were signs somebody more experienced than me at the time might have picked up that for this particular patient standard care wouldn't be enough. As an older colleague said, it gets easier to deal death over time, but the day it stops affecting you, you should stop practicing medicine. This was an acquaintance, but they had an angry drunk guy at the bar provoking them into a fight. The guy kept pushing them and doing light hits, so they went outside. One punch later, and the other guy's knocked out, and his head smashed into a sharp corner of concrete. Everyone who thinks they are ready to square up and fight someone needs to be familiar with the eggshell skull doctrine. There's no shame in running from a fight, unless you really think you can persuade a judge or jury that you don't deserve prison time. Not me, but my Mel. She was driving at night down a country lane with my Phil in the passenger seat and my husband, 9 years old at the time, in the back seat. She was coming to a bend when another car heading the opposite way rounded the corner in the wrong lane and hit her head on. The driver had been trying to overtake on a blind bend at around 70 miles per hour. He was killed almost instantly. My Phil and husband escaped with cuts and bruises, but my Mill was left permanently disabled. She still feels really guilt about it, even though it wasn't her fault. My best friend and I were unable to do anything for another friend of ours who fell on a climbing trip. We were desperate to help her, but there really wasn't much anyone could have done so far into the backcountry. We couldn't wake her up or move her safely, so we just kinda sat there. Eventually a helicopter came, but she was already brain dead by the time they got her to a hospital. It's been a few years since, and I ended up going to med school as a result. So now I know nothing could have been done. I still feel uncomfortable about it though. Not me, but a good friend. He was driving around a corner with a date, mid-afternoon, and the city had freshly mowed wet grass that got blown into the road by the riding lawnmower mulching instead of bagging. The car hit the wet grass on the road, like a banana peel, understeered the corner, and he slid off the side and into a tree. All this while only doing 35 miles per hour. But the car hit the tree directly in the passenger side door, and a branch impaled her side. He said he sat there and watched her bleed out before the ambulance could show up. Just a stucking Christ. Happened to a friend. They were a group of adventure influencers who do a lot of stuff like cliff jumping and cave diving and filming themselves. All strong athletes and very fit. They were trying to get some kind of a waterfall jump. One of them either slipped or misjudged the undertow of a cliff dive area. A very big no-no. She went in and didn't come back, getting sucked under the water and down to a larger pool. Her boyfriend freaked out and jumped in after her, trying to save her. He also didn't come up. Another friend also dived in and also didn't make it. The couple who went down eventually had their bodies recovered miles down the river. All 3 died. My uncle got a new golf cart just to drive around town in. My aunt was test driving with her niece, my cousin, uncle's daughter, as passenger. She went up the street to a parking lot and turned around. She accidentally bumped the front wheel on a curb. The cart flipped, spilling out her niece, which resulted in the golf cart landing on her head. My aunt was not the same for several years after. My entire family showed her so much support and love and reassured it. We knew it was an accident. What made the entire thing worse for her was the court completely annihilated my aunt. They went after her in every single avenue they could. Reckless driving, suspended license, revocation of nursing licenses, top fines they could give. It's a wonder she didn't receive jail time. To the judge, my whole family and friends made personal statements about how wonderful this woman is. It was an accident. We forgive her. You're making the healing process worse on everyone. Nope. They didn't care. We just turned left at an intersection when the car in front of me wanted to turn right into a convenience store parking lot. The problem was a truck was blocking the entranceway due to the snow, so he came to a sudden stop, so I rear-ended him. It was an older gentleman with his wife. They both seemed fine and were raging at the truck who took off. I ended up being charged for following too close. About a month and a half later I get a letter saying the guy's estate is suing me for causing his death. I sent it to my insurance company who settled the case. I was not allowed to see any of the case files. From what people told me, he was a smoker, so he wasn't in the best of health already. I'm still not sure how to feel about the whole thing. I kind of wish it had went to trial, so I could have closure one way or the other. Lawyer here, and you definitely do not wish it went to trial. Definitely. Something to be grateful for. Not me, but my stepdad about 2 weeks ago hit and killed someone on the road. For context, he is an overpass truck driver for a local company. The person he hit was attempting suicide via highway, and my stepdad was the unlucky person to do the deed. It was about 3 AM and raining, so visibility was low. The guy was also wearing full black besides blue shoes. I ended up seeing his dash comp, and boy was it rough. You couldn't really see the fact it was human afterwards. Stuff happened though, and it really messed him for a while and still messes with his work. He wasn't able to drive on the highway for a bit. Not me, but I witnessed my boyfriend get shot and killed 3 years ago. We were in the woods on a friend's property looking for arrowheads. A mutual friend on the same property was target practicing, and a bullet traveled 400 feet through the woods and got my boyfriend in the temple. We couldn't do anything but comfort him while we waited the 30+ minutes for the ambulance to arrive. Fuck man. I hope your other mutual friend is alright. Jesus Christ, that's horrible. You're just out enjoying your day and accidentally ruin someone's life and family. May they all find peace. Technically I'm on the other side of this, but in 2013 in Shreveport, Louisiana, they turned on new stoplights. My oldest son's father was stopped at that light. Somebody rear-ended the car, killing him instantly. The guy said he totally forgot they were turning the lights on, and he was petting his dog. It turned out a new co-worker lived in the same apartment complex as me across town. She had just moved to the area a few weeks back. We actually ended up going to Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows PT1 midnight screening together. She was a really passionate fan of Potter. It was great. Her car was in the shop suddenly one day, so I told her at work about a shortcut she could take home on her bike. She went that way and was killed by a drunk driver crossing that other road. She was 26. Guy was going 75 in a 35 zone trying to show off his souped up sports car. Sorry for the shortcut, Engie. My uncle was driving home from work a couple of years ago on a county road and hit a little boy who ran out in front of him before he could stop. The little boy was following his grandpa across the street to check the mail. 100% on the family, who weren't watching the little boy. Of course the Facebook brigade tried to blame my uncle, and there were unfounded claims he was texting and driving. I'll never forget the sounds that came from my uncle when he found out the boy died. Absolutely devastating. Thankfully, he didn't fall back into his old bad habits after this happened. Not me, but my father-in-law. He was at home with his girlfriend when a young guy high on something broke into their place through a window. While his girlfriend called the cops, my father-in-law held him and pinned him down until the police arrived. The intruder ended up dying from a combination of the drugs and a few other factors. Father-in-law was charged with murder, but the charges were all eventually dropped. It messed him up for life. He never got over the guilt and ended up passing away from an overdose himself a decade later, leaving 6 young kids behind. Man, that's a sad story. If it was as you described, charges should have never been brought. Bro, you actually watched the whole video. I'd give you a high five if I was a human. Make sure to click the like button and subscribe for more great content. See you next time.